Okay. We have a quorum, 1, 2, 3, 4, yes. Okay, well, I'd like to call this meeting of the Cunningham Town Board to order. It's Monday, April 13th, 2020, and this is a virtual meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown?
Here.
Colebrook?
Here.
Hersey? Jacobson? Eric, you're muted.
Myself.
Miller?
Here.
Roberts?
Here.
Wu?
Here.
Mayor Marlin?
Here.
And I'll note that besides myself, Supervisor Chenoweth and Assessor Williams.
And Attorney Fred Grosser.
And Attorney Fred Grosser.
And I would just like to remind viewers that the meeting is being recorded. It's streaming live through UPTV, and it also will be is able to be viewed on UPTV channel 6. Any public input for the upcoming City Council meeting could be submitted by email via citycouncil@urbanaillinois.us, or public participants can join the Zoom meeting by following the instructions on the agenda. All public participants in both the Township meeting and the City Council meeting will be muted except during public input, and video will remain off. If you want to speak, please raise your hand using the icon in the lower, I believe it's in the lower right corner.
After you turn on the participant window.
Yeah, after you turn on the participant window. Or if you're on the phone, you touch your name, and that's the equivalent of raising your hand. You can also join by phone by calling the number on the agenda. Okay, first item on this agenda is minutes of the previous meeting of March 9th, 2020. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
Was that Bill?
Bill, yep.
Okay.
Okay, I'll second. Dennis.
Seconded by Dennis?
Yeah.
Any corrections?
No.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? Okay. Next up is public participation. Does anyone from the public wish to speak?
I have no email.
Okay. Do you see anyone in the participant box?
No, I do not.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to the committee to verify bills. Town Fund and GA Fund. Danielle?
Yes. Good evening. Good to see you all virtually, and I just want to welcome Bill Colebrook to the Town Board. Good to meet you.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. It's good to meet you virtually as well.
So this last month, the Town Fund, we had our Town Fund, we had expenditures of $55,850.54. And in the General Assistance Fund, we had $70,333.53 in expenditures. That brings our total to $126,184.07. And just if you look at the supervisor memo, you can see the breakdown that we have 133 current GA participants, up significantly from 96 last month, which is one of the reasons that the GA fund is higher this month. Of that, we have a larger percentage that are homeless, 55 are homeless, whereas last month we had 36 homeless. We have been working to find temporary housing for folks, and 26 of the 55 we found temporary, or in some cases permanent, but usually temporary housing for. And then there's additional data, quite a few more males than females, 80 males and 53 females, no gender non-conforming, transgender or gender non-conforming. And our average age stays pretty steady around 46. We've served 243 total Urbana residents in this fiscal year. 99 of them have been homeless, and that's just for our general assistance. Our general assistance fund also funds rental assistance, and we've had a steady 5, same as last month, 3 eviction preventions and 2 move-in assistance. So we've served 27 households, July to present, average of 11 per month. And you have the town bills and before you, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the bills, and then I'll get into my memo a little bit later.
Any questions? Mary Alice?
So just comparing this month's to last month's bills, it looks to be about 20,000 increase in the general assistance fund. Is that correct?
Yes, I actually, let me pull this. I had a March, I did a March comparison last year and this year. Last year was 31,000 in March, and this year was 72,000, 72,400. And then also, yeah, so basically we went from 96 to 100 and, what did I say, 133. 33, and it will continue to rise. We expect that, we'll probably be close to 200 as we increase the general assistance roles. Part of that has to do with the fact that we're not doing terminations at this point. I can't mandate people to do community service, community work programs, so I will not be terminating any resident for that. And I'm also, because we're helping the homeless get temporary housing, I am not penalizing them because they found a temporary housing situation in Champaign or Rantoul, for example. As I emailed you early in March, we're going to help people find temporary housing, and if that becomes permanent housing, then they would be either transferred to that other township or they would be taken off the rolls. And in most cases, they'd be taken off the rolls because those townships don't serve that body. So yeah, so that's where we're at. And I'll talk a little bit about budget impacts in a moment, looking forward when I get into the officer report.
So how many people, if any, were removed from the rolls this month?
We had, I can pull it up, but I know that we had 2 people receive Social Security disability, so they were removed from the rolls. And we had 1 person move to Georgia, and he was removed from the rolls. So anyone who's moving out of the community or is getting on Social Security or is getting on TANF, Temporary Aid for Needy Families, they would no longer qualify, and they will continue to roll off of our rolls.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion to accept the bills?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we accept the town fund as indicated and the general assistant fund bills as indicated.
Okay,
Second.
there, second?
I'll second.
Second by
Jared Miller.
Jared, okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, thank you. Next up, officers report.
So I'll go ahead and move into an officer report, and then I'll hand it to Wayne so that he can provide an assessor's report. Essentially, I just wanted to give you, there's much to say. I will try to be brief. I put a lot of it in my memo. In particular, I want you to be aware of what's happening in our office because it has budget impacts, but also because you're elected leaders who are probably hearing from people in need. And so I want you to have the information that you need to help to direct people and to consider that, the township to be, it's this week or this month has been a very busy one for us, and we play an important role in the community as we see record layoffs in our community and across the country. Rental assistance is basically stayed static, and we expect that to be the case in part because people are applying for unemployment and they won't qualify for our program until they receive their unemployment. So once we've been testing that emergency broadcast system, so to speak, and we were able to get through unemployment by being on the phone for 3.5 hours. I think it's gotten a little bit better, but we continue to look and see. We've talked to a number of people applying, and you know, the state is staffing up and they really are working to be able to respond, but there's just such a deluge. So we expect rental assistance to spike, especially with any eviction. You know, evictions have been halted. So when that's taken off, the lid is taken off that, we expect we'll see more rental assistance. I don't really think that's going to have a big budget impact for this year. I think we'll see that most likely next year. We are, however, going to see a significant increase in general assistance. Partly what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of people who apply for general assistance because they have very little in the bank and they were laid off. So these are people who've never been on general assistance before. They, you know, they're service industry workers and they're applying. They will very likely qualify for unemployment thanks to the expansion of that benefit federally. So we are simply bridge funding for them. So I'm expecting every single new GA participant has until April 30th to submit their IDES claim summary to our office. They've been all informed of this. And if they are not able to get that claim summary because of the, you know, the lack of ability to reach unemployment, then we will extend another month. I don't expect folks who were laid off and can get unemployment to be on general assistance for longer than 3 months. And it'll probably closer to 2.5 max. So that's good news. And we will see that go down. There are a number of folks who do not there are folks who don't qualify for unemployment. And they were cash economy folks who got laid off and are not going to be able to get unemployment. So we've already seen some folks from the cash economy applying for general assistance. We have streamlined the process significantly. We're making, you know, we're trying to make it as easy as possible. There's now an online form. That online form is in English and Spanish. We have had a number of Spanish submissions. We have French speakers, Spanish speakers on our rolls and have historically, but we want to make that as easy as possible. We are using our general assistance reserves to cover the costs. We will probably need to come back and do a budget amendment, but I'm not absolutely certain. I was hoping to have you a financial report, but there's simply too much in flux. So I'll have much more information next month for you. Our staff prepared a graph for you, and you can actually see that last year in July, we were at 127 cases. So 131, which is actually now 133. The graph was done a little bit earlier. That you know, isn't that much different from July of last year, but then we saw a steep decline. You know, we saw a steady decline, I would say, and then a big spike. So what I wanted to just explain a few things that we've done in these 4 weeks. We help to be in the rental assistance partners and the funders, and we launched a COVID relief fund. We are providing rental assistance to households out of work because of COVID, so that they wouldn't have qualified under our county program. There's a link to that relief fund. If you know of anyone who needs to access that, they will need to show that they're denied unemployment benefits, and then they can apply for that. Those who are eligible for unemployment can also apply, but they would apply for our rental assistance program. So we'll help route them as they go through that process. But that's a really important fund. It's also open to undocumented residents, and we encourage undocumented residents to go through the YMCA to access that fund. The YMCA has legal staff that help to protect the privacy of those participants, and then they prepare those applications. So that's a really important, we had a huge spike in immigrant contacts about 2 weeks ago. And, you know, we saw a decrease in the folks who were non-immigrants who saw that they were getting stimulus checks and unemployment benefits, and we saw a spike in the immigrant population. So we convened a group last week and had a number of conversations, a listening session with immigrant rights groups, and funders really stepped up to the table to make sure that they were included in that relief fund, which involved some procedural and process changes. We provide immediate support, as does Andy and City of Champaign Township. We've been coordinating very closely because simply people are not able to get all of the paperwork that's necessary historically to get on general assistance because offices are closed. And some of that paperwork is not, what's really necessary for general assistance is, do you live in Urbana? And what is your asset level and what is your income level? The other things allow us to do case management ongoing. So we're allowing people to get on general assistance, and then we follow up with the Social Security disability letters, the IDES claim summaries, which is that unemployment claim summary. But we do verify location, and we continue to have people submit leases or landlord verification or proof of address through official mail. We have made some changes to our rental assistance program so the unemployed can access that. We created a resource guide, which is on our website. It's in English and Spanish, and we've distributed hundreds of these guides, printed guides, throughout the community through our Bucket Brigade and to the local shelters. And we've been tracking unemployment and stimulus funding. And this week, we're actually working with, I have 2 different interns working to ensure that many of our participants will not receive stimulus funding automatically. They don't have bank accounts. They didn't submit tax forms. We're working with them to submit their taxes, use the online tool that has been launched for them, and make sure that they can get that stimulus funding at least through as a check. Many of them move around significantly. We're offering Township as an address where they can have the check sent if they're homeless. So we're really trying to make sure that they get that. It is the case that in the Township rules, one-time assistance payments do not qualify as assets, certain kinds of payments. Now there's nothing called a COVID relief in that rule. So I've published rules that specifically say that the stimulus fund will not count against them for general assistance so that they can get that stimulus funding one time and continue to stay on general assistance because our asset limit is $1,000 and we expect people to get $1,200. I've been on many calls. I've been on a number of statewide calls with Housing Action Illinois, the Illinois Progressive Caucus. Number of people have reached out, reps have reached out, Rep Ramirez and Rep Ammons, to gather input on what is needed to address the housing crisis. And I've provided my opinion on that matter and some of the steps. I'll be meeting with IDA this week with Carol Ammons on Thursday to talk about the statewide referral network, which is broken and should be providing housing for people locally. So that, and we got our township garden planted real fast. So we're gonna have greens up here shortly. I have given a little bit of input on our Angel Donor Fund. I wanna say that, and thanks including to some of the town board members who have donated, thank you so much. We've had over 12,000. In fact, I think this is old. I was just trying to pull up, I think we're topping 13.5 right now in terms of donations in this past month. We've been working very hard to curate and prospect local needs. And we've launched a Bucket Brigade. And I wanted to make sure this is public because our Bucket Brigade, which was originally for our general assistance participants, we have now delivered to every participant who wants a bucket, which is about 100 people. And then we have opened that up and we're giving it to anyone in the Urbana School District region. So whether that may include some people outside of the township who live in mobile home parks, outside the community or to the east in Scottswood, we're happy to deliver. We've received a lot of donations that help us do that. And we have the Channing Murray Foundation is providing all of the labor for that free of charge. We are paying basically at cost for meals from the Red Herring. And they have also been fundraising to help cover some of those costs. So we've actually, we've delivered almost to 100 households. We'll top the 100 mark this week. We have been working with Austin's Place and See You at Home. One of the very early concerns was that people who were homeless wouldn't have a place to shelter in place. So we are using our Angel Donor Funds to pay for motel stays at low negotiated rates for anyone past the shelter capacity or who has symptoms. There was no other pot of money at the time. There is state money coming down that should be in place middle to end of April that will help with this. So we essentially have provided that bridge program, that bridge funding. We're also providing housing for any homeless family who's been assessed by centralized intake for the homeless and is basically awaiting to get into emergency shelter. So they don't have any shelter. We've shown that they're HUD definition homeless, and there hasn't been a lot of demand there, which is, I think, good. But there has been, there's been some support. And then we basically are talking to all of our participants, and actually we're sending an email out to all of our past participants, also surveying them about needs in the community and people who have specific needs, whether that's acetaminophen, masks, thermometers. We had a big donation of disposable thermometers from McKinley Foundation. We've had bags, boxes of masks. We have 4 different groups, collectives, I guess, of people who have been making masks, and we're adding the masks to our bucket brigade. So we're distributing the cloth masks through that process. So, we're doing everything we can to help people quarantine in place. Our participants, their only real mode of transportation is the bus. It is free and it's available, but because we work with so many immune compromised folks, we're really trying to avoid a situation in which they feel they need to take the bus to leave their home. So that's been very successful. And I really just will end with saying, I guess I should say, I do believe, it's not that I can't believe, but I am just, utterly grateful to the Urbana-Champaign community for the amazing amount of volunteer donation and support. I mean, the township on a daily basis is just, our bucket fills up every single day with support from the community. It's really unbelievable. And, we thank everyone in the community for recognizing the township is here for you and helping us be a vehicle for the people who are the lowest income families in our community.
Trustee Brown has his hand raised.
Yeah, hi Danielle. Thanks a lot, and I really appreciate all the work that the township's doing. I'm sure it's really hard to keep track of all the programs that are out there and directing people to the right programs that can benefit them. I did have a question about the tax tool that the IRS is providing for people that haven't filed maybe in the last couple of years because they didn't make enough money. As part of that, I think you can specify that your stimulus payment be deposited on a prepaid debit card, and then you'd get it a lot faster. I wondered if you guys had investigated the various debit cards that might be available out there and maybe suggested that option.
I have. I will take a look at it. It's very timely comment because our intern is reporting to me tomorrow morning. She just shared her research with me, and she basically created an FAQ. And I have not looked at it to see if it includes that. So thank you for that. I know that I did investigate with Busey very early on, having bank accounts where they would be ATM only, not checking, because many of our folks don't have bank accounts because they don't want to be overdrawn. But I think that we're not going to be able to put that in place in time. So having a prepaid debit card would be great. And also just frankly, people being able to make sure that the check actually gets to them. It's very difficult for us to get our checks to people because they move around so much. So we're really trying to work on making sure that everyone can be located in some way, and we have accurate mailing. And then we're going to help them. Many of them have a very hard time navigating. I'm meeting with the library later this week to see if some of their staff could help as cyber navigators. We certainly have cyber navigators that we can help, and we've been doing a lot of that phone assistance. My case managers no longer have update appointments, and so 100% of their time is connecting with their clients, which they do about once a week, and they basically help them navigate whatever systems that they need to navigate, including doing the computer work for them and basically helping them over the phone to the extent to which they can do that and it's legal. So I will look into the prepaid debit card.
Thanks. And just to follow up on the COVID relief fund that's being distributed through United Way, I think they've made 2 or 3 distributions. Can you give us an idea of how much the township has received from that and how is that being accounted for?
Absolutely. So what we decided as a team, the kind of rental assistance and funder team, was that United Way Community Foundation and Cunningham Township, because I have monies under the other grants and emergency assistance. Those are both things that have been budgeted by the town board. So I contributed 7,000, United Way and Community Foundation have contributed 20,000. And the way that works is that RPC is doing 100% of the intake. So they basically, so that we have one telephone number, and they've actually set up a call center so that they can take that influx, and they take both the rental assistance calls for the county or anywhere, and they'll refer them, or the COVID specific rental assistance through that call center. So then when they are approved for the COVID relief, we receive notification of that and where to send payment. And Township, City of Champaign is doing Champaign and Rantoul, and Cunningham Township is doing City of Urbana and the county outside of Rantoul, Champaign, or Urbana. So essentially our administration processes the payment, and then we request reimbursement from the United Way Fund for those dollars, with the exception of the dollars that we're putting in, which will exclusively go to Urbana residents. So essentially that's how we're doing that. We expect, and this is not, what we've been told is that this is the first allocation of funding, and that if the demand continues, which we anticipate it will, that there will be additional allocations of funding. And then I've also looked at my budget, and there's one grantee that has basically closed their program and will not be collecting their grant funding. And so, and it's a Salvation Army with it's basically a hotel voucher program. It's a housing program. So I'm looking to reallocate some of those funds if need be to the COVID relief. So essentially what you'll see starting the next month, we haven't had any, we actually haven't dispersed any funds yet, and we haven't received, but we have a request for disbursement for 2 funds, which we'll process this week. So what you'll end up seeing is those disbursement of funds will come out of our emergency assistance line item, which has been dormant. You haven't seen any activity there. That way it'll be segregated. And then you'll see the income coming in through other income line item from the United Way for the reimbursement.
Okay, thank you very much. And I hope as the stimulus payments roll in, your angel donor fund will expand.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks to all the people at the township who are making your efforts really felt throughout the community, Danielle. Wayne, would you like to give a report?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to first start out by welcoming Trustee Bill Cobra. Welcome to Cunningham Township government.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoy your time with us. I also want to give a special shout out and thanks to both Mayor Marlin and Supervisor Chenoweth for their leadership during these times. I can imagine that it is especially difficult given every thing that's happening.
Thank you.
So I'll start my report by saying in March, we discussed a survey sent out to apartment owners and managers in order to gather accurate information to use in assessing multi-unit properties in Cunningham Township. And I'm pleased to report that 68% have been completed and returned to our office. With the information owners have provided, the revaluation of multifamily units is proceeding as planned. The contract with Pictometry International Corporation, approved by the board in February of this year, is now in process. This contract will give the assessor's office access to aerial, oblique, and orthogonal imagery for Cunningham Township that will allow us to accurately report what attributes are present on a property at a specific point in time. Any changes in the property can be examined and reported for the purpose of calculating the assessment. The overhead flight has been completed as of about a week ago, and we expect to have those images later this month. While none of us knew that our world would be impacted by a global pandemic, the town board's decision to approve this resource will prove to be an asset to the township. The assessor's office would like to thank the town board. The work we do for the township is based on our ability to fairly assess properties based on characteristics and appraisal methods. We can continue to do our work of discovering and listing new properties, as well as locating any changes to existing properties such as demolition or additions, thanks to the Cunningham Township Board having the foresight to approve the contract with Pictometry. It is times like this, good leadership should be commended. There is no substitute for an in-person inspection of a property. However, this additional technology will allow us to correct any existing inaccuracies in the reporting of properties in Cunningham Township. At the current time, our in-person field work has been delayed by the stay-at-home order. These desk reviews of the new images generated by the most recent overhead flight will prove to be invaluable. The ability to serve the taxpayers of Cunningham Township, even in the most uncertain of times, with values that are fair and equitable, is the mission and main focus of the assessor's office. Again, I want to commend the town board for its foresight in authorizing the contract with Pictometry. While it's too early to cite any specific numbers for taxpayers, it's looking like any increases in assessments for residential properties will be minimal for unchanged properties. Obviously, if there have been additions or demolitions, there'll be changes in values. Commercial property reassessments are proceeding based on information provided by owners, and factoring done will be calculated based on sales ratio studies. I want to stress that values are as of January 1 of each tax year per law. I just want to add that these current times are the most difficult set of circumstances that I have ever had to face professionally. And I want to remind everyone that the township assessor does not set tax bills or tax rates. What the assessor's office does is more akin to splitting a very large check at the end of a meal. We want to make sure that people that ordered salad pay for salad, people that ordered for lobster and prime cut steak pay for that. I took an oath to faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Cunningham Township Assessor, and knowing the consequences of my actions to make assessments more fair, more equitable have weighed especially hard during these times. I am, however, committed to fairly and equitably carrying out the duties of Cunningham Township Assessor.
Thank you. Any questions for Wayne? Eric?
Yeah. I bet that people are starting to be late with rent. And I'm wondering whether, I mean, the proximate thing is the hardship on people who are having trouble paying the rent. And secondly, on the landlords. But down the road, I'm wondering, is that a factor that's going to influence the assessed value of rental properties? Or
So before I answer your question, there's one thing I left out of my report. So last month we launched a website, cto.us, and we are turning on additional statistics and analytics. And I just want to note that last month we had about 16,000 page views, which is much more than I had expected would ever happen. But I just wanted to put that out there. As far as people being late on rent and how that would affect values, like I said, we assess property as of January 1 of each year. So while that may not be reflected in assessed values for this year, it very well could be reflected in assessed values in future years.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis?
Well, I don't think I have any other questions. I just was wondering how the rental income from a property would have changed the assessed value if the assessed value is based on the structure.
Well, there are three ways to value property. You have the cost approach, where you estimate the cost of construction of a property that is more useful for new properties. You have the sales comparison approach, where you take like properties and compare them to each other and come up with a value based on sales. And then you have the income approach, where the value is generated based off of the earning potential of a property. And that earning potential is capitalized to come up with a market value.
So that becomes part of a percentage of the valuation generally?
I wouldn't describe it quite like that. I mean, typically the formula for an income approach is typically net operating, potential gross income minus expenses to get net operating income, and then you divide that by a capitalization rate.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. I don't think I was very up on that aspect of evaluation.
Any other questions for Wayne? Mary
That's
Alice.
Mary Alice.
Wayne, I realize that you don't collect the taxes, but I believe that the county board was discussing delay of the collection of taxes. I was wondering if you had any update on that, or if you knew any more information about that.
I just know what was in the paper in recent days. I don't know any more than that. Like I said, we basically are just kind of dividing a check or cutting the pie. We don't determine how big the pie is or when the pie gets served necessarily. That's what we've been.
Okay, I was just wondering if you had any conversations at the county level, but no, I do understand that the money is divided up in terms of all the taxing bodies.
Okay. Could you repeat that website one more time, Wayne, before we adjourn?
Yeah, it's www.ctao.us. There you can find our residential property record cards that we have scanned. There's other information that will be property characteristic information that will be added as we get there and update it. If you want a commercial property record card, you still have to email the office, and we answer emails as we get them.
Okay. Alrighty.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any other unfinished business for the town board?
No,
Nope. Is there new business?
I believe not.
No new business. All right, with no further business before the town board, we'll adjourn this meeting and we will go immediately into the city council meeting.